Okay, we're live.
Are we? Cool.
We are live. So it's just setting up. Hang on 1 second. I can't see you.
Yeah, it says meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Cool.
Okay, awesome. Only it's just going around in circles on my screen. So let's just see. Can you see it? Ah, there we go. Yeah, we are live. Awesome. So how are you, Danny?
Yeah, very good. Yourself?
I'm really good, but I actually can't see you, so I don't know what's happening.
I can see you. I don't see any presentation at this point, though.
No, I can see live, but I can't see. I seem to have lost my. I seem to have lost my screen. Oh, here we go. Yes, yes, I can see you. Fantastic. The wonders of technology, and cool. Especially when I'm trying to use Zoom and Facebook together. So let's just see what happens. And I can't see the video on my Facebook, so I'm just going to trust that this is happening. But it's recording anyway, so we'll be able to find it afterwards, and we can share it. So thanks for agreeing to be my person to talk to about this.
You're most welcome.
We had a little chat earlier just to kind of run through the slides and just for me to explain kind of what this was all about for me. So I suppose it'd be good maybe to just give a little bit of background to why I even decided to do this. And I know we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and it was great to be able to exchange some ideas in terms of how to help people with their health and their stress, and be able to give people really some very simple and practical tools that they can really look after themselves. And particularly after that last chat, I was thinking away about, you know, what I do. And obviously my background is a very unusual mix of engineering, very logical, very kind of precise, and it's all about data and using numbers in a very effective way to be able to basically solve problems with obviously safety factors either side. So I have that sort of logical brain, but what I've been doing for the last 18 years is coaching and teaching NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And I was rather horrified actually after our chat where I had said, no, NLP is not being used in the messaging that we are receiving, to then actually find that actually it is. And NLP is not something, it doesn't have a personality, it's not a sentient being, it's what people use with it. And I know you've had an experience of NLP yourself, haven't you? You've done the training.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, to practitioner level, yeah. So it's like anything in there, can be used for good and bad. Hopefully more good, but we can see evidence to the contrary in the world right now.
Absolutely, and one of the scary things for me was that the language patterns that are being used, which are very deliberately designed to be quite vague and to mislead, and to basically give people a false sense of actually fear as opposed to security, that they actually need to be more vigilant and more worried about things just constantly in their lives. And we know from, and you know with your own work with the total health transformation, your book and the work you do as a chiropractor, that the impact that stress has on our immune system. So maybe you want to share a little bit about that before we start.
Yeah, I mean, so everyone's been in a situation before where they've been really, really stressed out. You know, for example, if you've had a big project on at work, or you've just been working really, really hard at whatever it is that you're doing, you're basically running on adrenaline. So the stress hormones in your body, the cortisol, the adrenaline, all the other stress hormones like that, which are useful in certain situations. But when you're chronically in what's called the stress response, or commonly known as in layman's terms, fight or flight, we're designed to be in that in very short bursts of time to get us out of danger, or if we need to fight something, going back to when we were hunter-gatherers 40,000 years ago. And the reality is, going back to modern day, if we're in work and we're really stressed out or working really hard, then we go on holiday, we've all been in a situation before where you switch off and you stop when you get sick. There's a reason for that, you know, stress. I was reading some research recently for another project, and immunosuppression, stress-related immunosuppression it was all about. And your immune system gets down-regulated when you're in a fight or flight situation. If you think about it, it's logical and it's innate, and it's a perfect response. If a tiger is chasing you and it's going to eat you, right there and then, you do not need your immune system, because you could be that tiger's dinner. You probably would be if a tiger's chasing you. So you don't need your immune system at that point. It's an intelligent decision for the body to down-regulate it at that point. The reality is, if your immune system is getting down-regulated all the time because you're always stressed out your mind, you're going to get sick easy, aren't you? So
absolutely, all your defense mechanisms are already being used up. You know, I always think of it as soldiers who are all, you know, mobilized, and they're all, you know, and of course they're just constantly wide awake, and they're not given any downtime, and they're not given, you know, what they need in terms of energy to be able to actually, when you really need them, for them to be there, that they're actually they're distracted, they're doing something else.
Absolutely.
That is actually not necessary. And that's definitely one of my big concerns, is to see the level of fear and anxiety that everybody is in. And it's not to say, oh, it doesn't matter, and, you know, forget about it and just don't worry about anything. But I suppose from my professional point of view, what I've been doing for 18 years is actually to help people to reduce their stress, to reduce their panic, to reduce their depression, to reduce anything that is causing them that emotional stress inside their mind and inside their body. And as a result of that, actually to help people become more empowered and feel more in control, and actually as a knock-on effect to actually be healthier, you know, not just mentally, but actually physically as well. And you know, we're constantly bombarded by these messages that are designed to keep us in that fight or flight response. And for so many people, I do feel that it's going to have just an awful detrimental effect on their health. And as we're coming into flu season and into the winter, we need to be as healthy mentally and physically as possible. So this came into my mind as a way of maybe just helping people in a little bit of a lighthearted way to maybe just identify which animal are they behaving like during this time. And it's not designed to offend, it's not designed to insult anybody. And of course, if you know, you can't actually offend or insult anyone, they can only really choose to be that. And the aim of this is very much to help people with the emotional and the mental response that they're actually experiencing, and to find maybe another way out of this, still protecting themselves, but in a much healthier and more empowered way. So will I share my slides? Will we have a look at the
yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. So you'll have to bear with me. This is always a little bit. There we go. So we've got our little. No, it's not really a questionnaire. People are not gonna fill stuff in and kind of find out what it is at the end. It's more, I'm just gonna explain each animal and what we can do and what people are generally experiencing when they're in this one. So unfortunately, I think, and I know I was definitely this at the beginning. Well, not right at the beginning, actually right at the beginning, in early March, well, February, March, when we were hearing about this in China, and then obviously started to hear about it in Italy. My original response actually was quite laid back, because I had lived in Southeast Asia during SARS-1. And I lived through it. I never saw it. It was meant to be a pandemic, an epidemic, but I actually didn't see any evidence of it personally. You know, I sort of heard about it and everything else. So, and also swine flu, and you know, so for the last however many, you know, 20 odd years, we've had all these pandemics that we've heard about on the news, but I've never had a personal experience of it. So my original feeling was very much, we'll be fine. Everything will be okay as long as the people who are vulnerable are being looked after, and everything else will be okay. And then of course, the original modeling and the predictions came in, and it looked like millions of people were going to die. And of course, immediately then, I know I personally did go into quite fearful and quite stressed, not so much for me, but actually more for my family. And unfortunately, I think some people have got stuck in that for 6 months.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, that they're just a deer in headlights, that they're just, and if we go into that fight or flight, that stress response, but we can't find a way out of it, it actually starts to feed into itself, doesn't it? It's very much this thing of, okay, I feel like I'm in danger. And the interesting thing about all of this is actually we are all self-preserving creatures. We want to stay alive. Like all of us want to stay alive as long as possible. That's inbuilt inside of us. We're able to assess risk and make our own judgment call on what's actually going on and whether we are safe or we're actually in danger. But what I feel is happening is that if people are stuck in this kind of deer in headlight mode, it's because their only source of information is coming from mainstream media, from government announcements, and some people are just every day they're tuning in to the 6 o'clock news here. I don't know what it is in the UK. To find out, what's the latest figures for cases. We're not going to kind of go into much about that today, but that thing of, where are we at? But it's totally tunnel visioned, and it's only on COVID-19. It's not on anything else that actually might be dangerous for us, or we do need to pay attention to from that respect. And I think we all see people who are absolutely terrified, and they're really scared for themselves, and they're really scared for other people. They've been told that, even if you're well, you could be carrying something that is absolutely deadly for somebody else. And it's a very strange situation to be in. So and I've spoken to a lot of people, and I've helped a lot of people with this. And the first thing to do is to breathe without a mask, to be at home, to be out in the fresh air, and to actually just take a big deep breath, and to do a process called grounding. And grounding is such a simple process. And what I'll do is I'll take you through it. I know you've probably done it already, but just for the people watching, I'll actually explain what that is right at the end of the video, because I suggest this really for everybody. But grounding is so powerful because it brings the person back into the moment, back into the present, and this ability to really look around and not be in the past and not be worried about the future, but be here right now, and to actually inform your body of what's happening, and are you safe or are you in danger? And if you're genuinely in danger, you will respond in kind. You're not going to just be blasé, but actually, when people are home, when they're out and about, and they're actually completely safe, to just really feel that and actually get into that. And one of the things that I think is really important, and I know I had to do this, and I don't know about yourself where you were at with this, but to just switch off all media, mainstream and social, at least for a few days, if not for a week, and to just take a complete break from that. Because worrying about something that we are not in control of, that is beyond our boundary, beyond our walls, beyond our lives, actually, doesn't change what's happening out there, and all it does is actually it hurts us, and it brings that sense of worry into our present moment. And that I heard a great expression, which is if stress solved problems, we wouldn't have any.
True that.
So and one of those things is when you've taken that break, when you've calmed down, when you've taken a big deep breath, is just to actually start looking around and looking for a little bit more of a balanced view, to not just go to one source of information, because that's dangerous in any walk of life, isn't it? If you're only ever going to one source, you're not going to get that balanced view, and to just be able to be open, really to that. And I'm not telling anyone what to think with this, just in case people think I'm saying one or the other. It's just about being able to help people to just bring that stress level down, because without doing that, our brains just literally don't function. So do you have any advice yourself for the deer in headlights, the person who's caught in that stress mode?
I would reiterate a lot of what you've said there in terms of media. I mean, the media and the news and stuff is designed for one reason and one reason alone: to get people's attention, and it gets people's attention by having them in fear. Now, when you're fearful in any respect, obviously the stress response is going to be turned up. Now, I stopped watching the news and reading papers and whatnot over 10 years ago, because all it does is put you in a state of fear and panic. This is regardless of whether there's a pandemic going on or not. You know, like 6 months ago, the news and the papers still have the same function in society. And the worst thing you can do, which is what most people do, particularly I've found older generations, they start the day with the news and they end the day with the news. That is the worst thing you can do.
Absolutely.
In terms of, you know yourself, when you're sleeping, the last thing that you fed into your mind, if that's negativity and it's the end of the world kind of scenario, your dreams are going to be very interesting, to say the least, aren't they?
Yeah, and I actually heard a lot of people had trouble sleeping at the beginning of all of this, that their sleep was disturbed, which again adds into that elevated levels of cortisol, you know, and I heard a very interesting expression, which is the COVID stone. It's the weight that people have put on during this during this time. And I would definitely say that a big part of that is lack of sleep. It's not being able to actually let your body, you know, really relax and really unwind enough to be able to actually just process what you've eaten, and to not hang on to it thinking that you're going to need these extra pounds as safe, almost like a life vest, you know, around your waist, you know, that you're going to need this extra fuel to basically keep your vital organs going. You know, this is not a healthy way to be at all, and our health is so important, so important. I really cannot stress it enough. You know, going forward, and our mental state and our physical state are absolutely 100% interlinked, and there's so much evidence of that. There's so much research that's been done. It's pretty undeniable. So as I said, I was definitely this at the beginning, and after a while started to move into another animal. And I don't know if I spent too much time as the ostrich, but I do know a lot of people who this is the animal that really is representing where they're at. They might be feeling a little bit uneasy, a bit anxious, and often because I've been researching so much and, you know, looking at so many videos and articles and talking to people and really looking beyond, you know, just mainstream media. Often when I mention the word COVID-19, they're like, I don't want to know. No, I don't want to hear it. I'm not interested. Don't want to know anything. And I sort of wanted to understand a little bit more, kind of just to figure out in my own mind, well, where are they at? Because I want to understand where people are at. I don't just want to talk at people and just expect them to just listen to me and just take what I'm saying. You know, I want to be able to understand from their point of view what's going on. And what I noticed is a lot of those people who are sticking their head into the sand, it's not because they're nothing to do with intelligence, by the way, absolutely zero to do with that. I think it's that they're extremely busy. They're really, really busy in their lives. A lot of people who work for companies where other people have been furloughed may have actually ended up busier than ever over the last 6 months. They're working maybe 2 or 3 times more. So even if you look at the likes of, you know, the logistics company in terms of food supplies going into all the supermarkets everywhere, you know, they've got to be totally switched on in terms of their jobs. And I heard something quite interesting today, which is that some people also can't risk, you know, saying anything that is contrary to the narrative, to the mainstream narrative. Which, when you think about this from a logical point of view, when have we ever not been able to just being able to talk about things? You know, just because we disagree with something, that to me is a very confusing situation to be in, is this kind of censorship and this idea of, you know, there's something wrong with you if you're questioning. But I do think a lot of people have got this pressure now because their jobs and because they have to feed their families. They've got to focus on that. That's their priority, absolutely. And I totally get that. They may feel that they just can't go there. They just can't investigate this. But of course, they're out and about, and if they're working, they're still going to get snippets, aren't they? They're going to get the headlines from the radio or the TV later in the evening and things like that. And they're probably following the guidelines, not necessarily because they're afraid for themselves or their families. It's just in case, and maybe it's because it's the rules, and they just don't want to have any hassle. And that's it. And the problem with that for me is that, again, we should be able to get back to a free society where we can have a discussion well, we can talk about alternative views. It doesn't mean one person has to win. It's about sharing ideas and be able to move forward as a collective, with our knowledge being able to come together so that we can find the best way out of this. And my fear for those who don't want to listen to this and don't want to pay attention is that there's so much happening. And this is not just me saying it. This is, we see this on a daily basis if we're looking behind the scenes, that there's a lot going on that if we were to stick our heads in the sand and eventually hope it's just going to blow over, when our heads pop up, we might find ourselves in a very different world than we're expecting. We're not going to get back to where we were. It's just not possible. With too much has happened. But what world we're moving into will be decided by the decisions and choices that we're making today.
100%.
So again, it's that thing of, well, what can we do if someone's just like, I'm just too busy, I don't have time for this, I've got to feed my family, I've got to keep my job going, I can't risk, I know a lot of people who are not following the rules with their jobs have lost their jobs as a result of it, and that's a very dangerous situation, that they're not been given that freedom of choice. So again, it's to breathe and to ground themselves and to just check in with their gut instinct, because a lot of people are suppressing what they kind of, at an instinctive level, they know that there's something going on. And anything that's going to affect that person directly or their family directly that's not sitting with them, I would just encourage again to just do some research, to just look around beyond mainstream and just see, and just use alternative sources, for information to get as balanced a view as possible, because at the moment that's really, really not happening. So do you have any advice for the ostriches out there who are sticking their heads in the sand?
Well, to be frank, ostriches sticking their head in the sand are in denial, aren't they? Whether that's because they don't want to know, they're hoping it'll pass by in the next few. They've probably been hoping it's a passing phase for the past 6 months. That's a long passing phase, isn't it? So
very, very long time.
I would suggest that, as you mentioned, do some research. I would also strongly suggest have an open mind that what you're seeing right now may not necessarily be factual, and there might be a different story. The main thing I would say is be open that there might be a different side to this story, because every story has more than one side, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's an interesting thing about being open to being wrong. No one likes to be wrong. It's a very embarrassing feeling to go, wow, I really believe something. And I know I've been through this multiple times over the 6 months, which is I really believe something. I might have posted something and then someone's gone, actually, do you know what, that's actually not true. And they've pointed me to very clear and concise evidence to show that I'm wrong. And I do feel a bit embarrassed, but afterwards I get over it. It's like, okay, well, look, that was just my belief, the belief du jour. That was just what I believed that day. That's what the special was. And I think unfortunately in our society it's about being right, and I'm certainly not talking about this from that I'm right. I'm just talking about this from very much helping people to really make their own minds up and to make up their own decisions, freely, of their own free will as well. So yeah, absolutely being really open to this, and that's really the aim of this, is just to give a little bit of a, as I said, bit of a lighthearted kind of touch to something that is incredibly serious. But if we don't lighten up a bit with the whole thing as well, it's like fun hasn't been cancelled. That's up to us whether we continue to have fun, and it's so important in life, again, with our health. So then this is definitely one of the animals I have probably been the most, which is the rabbit going down rabbit holes. And this is when people do start to search for beyond what they're hearing in the media. So they hear something in the media, or there's someone says something to them, or wherever the source of information comes from, and then they start digging, and they go, they're taking one thing and they start digging to try, and it's actually because I think we have so much uncertainty going on. We have so little really definitive information that explains what's happening, that there are some people, and I know I'm definitely one of them, that these open loops. It's like, well, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. So, and I'm not getting the answers from the usual sources. So I need to go elsewhere and I need to ask questions. So this is not, again, one or the other side in terms of, if you're for the measures or you're against the measures, it doesn't matter. Either way, we will find as much information to support our beliefs. And I know we discussed this earlier, which is very much that if we really believe something, we want to be right. We want to have certainty that, yeah, that's the right thing, to believe. And often people then will join, groups on social media that are all thinking the same way. And then it's like, see, I have all these people, they all think the same way as me, therefore I'm right. And either way, again, I'm not saying which way to go for people, but it kind of adds weight to people's arguments. And of course, the more information you find about something, the more you want to convince other people that you're right. And you want to just bombard them with all that information. And that's definitely been my shortcoming, I think, throughout this time, is when I find something really interesting, I'm like, wow, I never knew that. Look at this detail. And if I'm talking to an ostrich, they're like, I don't want to know. I'm sorry, I don't want to know. I'm not. Or a deer in headlights, they're like, they can't even hear that information. It just doesn't compute because they're just in fear mode and they're just in that kind of survival mode. And to get your kind of brain moving, you've got to come out of that and you've got to just start thinking, okay, let's just have a look at this and see this information. But so what can people do? Well, again, stop, breathe, just take a break from that digging, because it can become all consuming. And again, I know I'm absolutely guilty of this. My family and friends are probably sick of me talking about this stuff, but that's okay. I have noticed that when I just take a break from it, even for a day, even if I just say, right, I'm not going to be looking at this stuff for a day, it's an amazing, relief and release, of that. And the reason I came up with these animals was because, again, I want to, when I'm talking to someone, to have absolute respect for where that person is coming from and what they're feeling. So one of the things I'm always very careful, and I hope I have maintained this, is to not be disrespectful or rude to anybody just because they have a different opinion, from me. And I can't honestly say that that's been the same from other people towards me, though, which has been quite upsetting, to be attacked on a personal level, not the information, but just me as a person. And I think if we can all just take a breath and just see each other as human beings, understand that, I was thinking, if you've got two rabbits who've gone down two very different rabbit holes and they've got as much information and resources and research as possible, it's like two fantastic lawyers battling it out in court. And they've both got equal amounts of evidence to support their argument. And you keep ending up with a hung jury. So you have to keep going back through and you keep finding more evidence, and this one's finding more evidence, and you're bringing out, witnesses from God knows what corner of the world and everything else. And my biggest kind of, wish for people is, again, to just be open-minded, to be polite, and to be prepared to be wrong, to not go in just with that single-minded vision of convincing the other person that they're wrong and you're right, and they've got to take on your point of view. And one of the things I keep having to remind myself, coming back, is that actually, apart from those in power, apart from those who are making these decisions, all the rest of us, we actually are on the same side. We all want to get back to some sort of real normality. We want freedom. We want to be able to be treated like adults and to make our own decisions and not be living under this constant fear. I don't think any of us, really want this. But some people think we've got to get back to that one way, and other people think we've got to get back to it another way. But ultimately, actually, we're all looking for the same outcome. So I'm going to assume, Danny, that you've been a bit of a rabbit going down rabbit holes as well.
Yeah, at times, yeah, for sure. It's very easy to get sucked in and drawn into it. I think most of us have been either members of various groups online, or you post something on your own status and then all of a sudden there's loads of people commenting, and some are saying you're right and some are saying you're wrong. It's just so stressful. Like one of my mentors has said for years, he said to myself before and also to other clients, I'm totally prepared to be wrong, or you. Now, reality is, if people are not prepared if they're not prepared to be wrong, then in their mind they're always going to be right.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, and that's why there's so many people. You mentioned people getting nasty and attacking personally and all that kind of thing. That relates to a few things: anger and fear, the two main ones, really. And you mentioned, like, well, what can we control here? What can we control? And I'm reminded of, you've probably heard of it before. My mum taught me years ago. Have you heard of the Serenity Prayer?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so whether it's God, universe, or whatever, I'll use the word God because that's what I was taught years ago. God or Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, there's some things we can change, there's some things we absolutely can't. And the wisdom comes in by knowing which is which.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it's looking at being able to just take a step back and just start to see different points of view, and start to see, you know, that not everything is one-sided. You know, it can't be. That's not how life works. Certainly it wasn't how it worked before. 6 months ago, we were always able to have a discussion, and look, sometimes it's just about agreeing to disagree. And again, just respecting the other person and just going, that's okay. It's not my job to change people's minds at all. Only the individual can change their mind. No one can do it, for them.
Yeah.
But the rabbit in rabbit holes is, it can get a little bit intense, and it can get very consuming. And it is important that if people are going down those rabbit holes and constantly looking at data and constantly looking at research and constantly, all these videos and everything else, to take a break and to really look after, again, their mental health with this, because this isn't healthy either, and it can become all consuming. So the next one is the eagle, and this is about the bird's eye view. So I would say that a lot of people who are actually taking that big step back, who've gone down all the rabbit holes, they've gathered as much data and information as possible from multiple sources, from both sides, and they're looking to try and to connect the dots. Probably are a little bit all over the place, in the sense that initially there's a sense of, oh wow, kind of light bulb moments of seeing how things are connected and how things are actually working, not just at a detail level, but actually that big picture level. I think initially when people start to see the other side and they start to look at the more balanced view, that can initially actually feel really, really angry, get really cross at the fact that they feel like, well, actually, I've only been given this one narrative. Now I actually know there's other points of view, but that hasn't been kind of made public. And we can feel a little bit hurt and crossed and frustrated and angry at that. And then it's about kind of letting that go and taking that bigger step back again and just going, look, it is what it is. It is what it is, not in a kind of a giving up way, but just to recognize, again, it's what are we in control of? It's going, right, look, this is really big. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I can only guess. The only people who know are the ones who are behind the scenes and who are making these decisions. They're the ones who know for definite. And it's just going, look, I don't have any influence on these organizations. I don't have any influence on those people at that level. I only have influence at my level. So I think it's about taking that step back, seeing the bigger picture, and then going, right, where can I make a difference in my life, to myself, to my family, to my friends, to who I'm actually in direct contact with, not to someone else's granny or to someone on the other side of the planet. I don't have any control over that and what they do, or the environment or everything else, but just to bring it back to a much more manageable level, so it's not so overwhelming. It doesn't feel so completely out of our control. So that whole thing of, again, breathing, being grounded, just coming back. This is the one thing that has absolutely saved my sanity through this, is this process of grounding and just becoming really, really present, because the only thing that actually exists is right here, right now. We can think about the last 6 months and get very angry. We can worry about the next 6 months and be very stressed. But neither of those exist anymore. It's just about being here right now with ourselves, with our family, being really, really present. And I think that's quite tough. And it is a challenge for me as well to remind myself to do that. But when I do it, everything changes in that instant. It's quite remarkable. So it is about that big picture perspective and staying as detached from things as possible. So what advice do you have there, Danny, on this one?
What I've found recently, which I've done periodically in the past before, but what I've found recently, to be able to detach myself, right? I'm sat in front of my PC right now, but up until very recently, like most people, there was social media on my phone, which means, you know, I'm contactable 24/7 on social media and stuff. So I got rid of that off my phone, got rid of Facebook, got rid of, I don't use Twitter anyway.
Can I ask, when you were getting rid of it off your phone, how did you actually feel at that moment? Like, were you quite anxious with it, or had you reconciled that decision and you were quite kind of good with it?
Anxious of getting rid of it, or anxious because I was going to get rid of it?
Yeah, anxious because you were going to get rid of it.
Oh no, I thought to myself, I'm not getting rid of social media completely because it's still on my computer. It just means if it's not on my other devices and stuff, I'm not going to be distracted by it as much because it's not on my phone. I noticed for the first day or two, I was picking up my phone all the time, and habitually you'd usually be checking Facebook or Messenger and stuff like that, and picking it up, and I'm like, oh, doesn't have that on there, put it back down. But that was happening for a few days, and I'm like, oh my God, it's just the fact that it wasn't there, and I subconsciously thought it still was.
Yeah, well, we're anchored. We're anchored to it. You know, it's that Pavlov's dogs.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, and when we hear things, when we hear that, oh, something's come in, I had to turn all my alerts off. I have to say that helped.
Yeah, I switched all of those off years ago. I found them too distracting, and you know, like the Pavlovian thing you just referred to. Every time you get an alert and stuff, you can get one of two things. You might get some releases of serotonin and dopamine if it's something that you're expecting that's happy. Yeah, nice, something you want. But if it's something the opposite to that, you're going to get stress hormones spiking, so that then makes you anxious and jittery.
You haven't even read it, you haven't even looked at it yet, but straight away you're in that response. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the thing, you know. Emails and stuff, I do look at emails from time to time on my phone, but I probably 10 years ago turned off the alerts to emails because they come in sometimes multiple times.
Especially if you've signed up to anything and someone's got hold of your email address, and it's not even an important email, it's just something that you've subscribed to, and you know, just distracting. And I think it's all of this, if we think of this as preserving our energy as much as possible. I always think that we've got a certain amount of energy in the day, and as the day goes on, different things will take that energy away. We're expending it, and we're spending it on things, and it's, what are we spending that energy on? Is it something that is actually going to bring us something, or is it something that's just going to take away something? You know, so that's fantastic. Yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take my social media off my phone. Quite anxious about that. Oh, well, I am going to do it for definite. This is going to be an interesting thing for the next few weeks to see the difference that it actually makes. And it's not about, again, I'm not sticking my head in the sand. I'm going to look at things, but just on the laptop, and just give myself maybe an hour a day, and that's it. And that's my time to spend on it. No more. So yeah, awesome advice. That's fantastic. So who's next? Well, the lion is next. And I think the main emotion that some people feel when they're looking for truth, they're looking for justice, and then they start to see that maybe we haven't been receiving those things, we're actually having the opposite, is to get really, really angry. And the reality is, anger or fear, either of those are not useful for us. They don't help us to be our best selves. And trying to be our best selves, you know, aiming to be our best selves on a day-by-day basis, even a minute-by-minute basis, is hard work. So if we're stuck in not just fear, but if we're stuck in anger and righteousness, that's not a very pleasant emotion to be on the receiving end of either. If somebody is roaring at you and you know, but it's about, how do you take this very, very strong, very powerful emotion and actually turn it into affirmative action. And affirmative action could be whatever that is for that person, but it's about how do they start to look at, you know, defending themselves and their family and their friends and everything else. And it might be a sense, people might be in this state thinking, I'm fighting for everybody's freedom. And the reality is, we actually can't. We can only do what's right for us. And hopefully that has a positive ripple effect. But if people are together and joining forces, obviously it's different. So some people might have set up groups, they might be talking to people on a daily basis, sharing their information, looking to help as much as possible. And again, I know I've been a little bit guilty, not a little bit, probably a lot guilty of this. And it's just to actually recognize that myself and my family are my priority. And that should be the same for everybody. That's not being selfish. That's actually being able to, you know, one of my favorite expressions is you cannot serve from an empty vessel.
Very
so
true.
if you're depleting yourself and you're sacrificing yourself for the sake of other people, even people you don't even know, the reality is, well, what good does that do? Because now the world has got one less person who can actually participate in a positive way. You know, if we're in negative states, we're having that negative ripple effect. If we're in our best self state and we're grounded and we're operating from integrity and honesty for ourselves, then that's going to have a really positive ripple effect, again, you know, for the people that we meet. So again, breathing, grounding, coming back to the present, just being in our bodies. And really, as I said, you cannot serve from an empty vessel. So giving yourself sufficient downtime away from everything, doing stuff that's fun, eating good food, sleeping well, having, you know, quality time with your family and your friends. And of course, if people are going to become active in any kind of political ways, I would advise that they seek legal advice to make sure that they don't put themselves in any kind of legal situation that is going to compromise them, because then again, that's not much good. But I would advise people to keep going as well, that it's not about just, we can't go from being a lion to being an ostrich. I think that would be a little bit weird. I don't think you can kind of just turn this kind of stuff off. It's just minding yourself a bit more. So what advice would you have for the lions out there, Danny?
I'd reiterate stuff you were saying about downtime and having some me time, you know, because anger is a very powerful emotion, and when it's channeled in the right way, it absolutely is very, very useful. You know, a lot of organizations and businesses and whatnot have been started and driven on that, you know, certainly in the beginning to get it off the ground. It's also very draining though. It's absolutely exhausting. So it's a case of looking after yourself, give yourself, I love what you said about you can't give or serve from an empty vessel. It reminded me of what two of my brothers actually said something quite similar. My youngest brother, he'd always say, is your glass half full or half empty, Dan? And then my oldest brother, when I was a teenager, I had some, because he's 10 years older than me, he often, if I had some stuff going on in my life, he'd give me advice and whatnot when I was a teenager. And he said, you know, sometimes you're able to give, but unless your cup is overflowing, you've got nothing to give. It's quite similar to what you said, you know, 3 different analogies meaning the same thing. Yeah. And it is so true. If you haven't looked after yourself first, that's probably partly where that old phrase, charity begins at home, comes from. You know, you've got to look after yourself first before you can help others in any context of life.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I think the message at the moment is that you have to sacrifice yourself for other people. And that makes absolutely no sense, because it doesn't, if you're looking after yourself, it doesn't mean to hell with everybody else. It doesn't mean, okay, I can be completely selfish and I don't care about anyone else. It's actually about recognizing, if I'm looking after myself, I am in a better place to help other people. Absolutely. I'm actually able to give then. I'm able to listen. I'm able to be more compassionate. But that has to start here. It cannot start from outside of ourselves. And I think that to me is one of the biggest things, is that if we all took responsibility for our own health, for our own wealth, you know, for our own actions, for our own, you know, ecology of mind, not just ecology of the environment, but actually checking the consequences of our choices and our decisions, and checking that it's right for us first before we check is it right for everybody else. If it's really a great decision, it will have that positive ripple effect again, from ourselves to the people directly around us, to our wider community, and to the environment. I'm going to take a little story about actually where I used to live. I used to be able to see people walk from a petrol station down to, I was in an estate, and where I lived was at the top of this estate. So this was where people would come, and it was quite a long walk, I suppose, back to their homes. if they'd been to get an ice cream or a chocolate bar or whatever. And I would often see people coming along down the road, they've just bought an ice cream and they take the wrapper off and they would just throw it on the road. They would just throw it on the ground. And not like I was looking out the window all the time, don't get like twitching curtains, but I would see this quite, especially, you know, kids maybe coming home from school or whatever. But it was all ages. And I remember first of all going, well, who the hell do they think is going to pick that up? You know, and then I realized that actually, if they didn't fully respect themselves and their minds and their bodies, how could they respect their environment? How can you? Because when you suddenly start to bring that self-respect in and everything else, you can't disrespect people around you. You can't disrespect the environment. You will look after it. And it's something I think if we all learned how to do, the world would be an amazing place, you know, at the end of the day, rather than just going, I'm going to throw that, someone else can pick it up. I don't care, you know. And I think that this is this whole thing of looking after yourself and respect. It has a really, really positive impact. It's not about being selfish. We actually don't even have a word for it in English. I think in Sanskrit there is a word that essentially means like self-care to benefit others. You know, this is where everyone's experiences actually starts from inside themselves. It's not about other people. So to be able to bring that in. So the lion's got to be careful, I think, to not burn themselves out and
Absolutely.
And to do that. So then it's actually, these are not who we're talking to, but this might be the people to watch out for. And I have seen this expression used over and over and over again. And it's not everybody, it's not all the people, you know, who are in the position of authority or power. It's only certain ones of them. To me, it's looking at people who have given one very clear set of advice at the beginning of all of this, and then have gone 180 degrees the other way. They've completely flip-flopped from one to the other. And it's created so much confusion, I think, for people in the sense of, hang on a minute, you said this and now you're saying this. And to me, they're quite easy to spot as well, which is this thing of they think they are above the law and the rules do not apply to them. And we've certainly in Ireland, we have seen an awful lot of that over the last few weeks, where there's been one rule for everybody, and yet there are certain people who just seem to think that, oh, well, it doesn't apply to them. And that has really angered people, and rightly so. Rightly so. So the question is, you know, if you see that, then they can't possibly be acting from a place of integrity or honesty. You know, so I think we have to be careful when listening to those people. It's not saying don't believe them, but we just have to be aware that, you know, there might be something else going on. And I've just come up with two questions. One is, okay, if this person's flip-flopped, the question is, well, what have they got to gain by flip-flopping? If the flip-flopping is maintaining the narrative and keeping it going, is there some sort of conflict of interest? Is there some sort of, you know, financial reward that they're going to get? And then the other question is, if that's not there, is maybe they've got something big to lose. Maybe it's their professional pride, their reputation, you know, or their credibility, that if they're now seen that actually they've given wrong advice and everything else. Again, coming back to very hard to be wrong, very hard to admit, actually, I made a mistake. It's such a tough thing, you know, for most of us to do. But if we can be open to being wrong, I think, you know, we can really start to loosen, you know, what's going on. If everybody can be open to being wrong, who has given flip-flop advice in particular. And I always think if they're doing that, then there's something they know that we don't know. I don't know what it is, but I feel like there's something behind that. So do you have any advice there in terms of when we see the snake in the grass?
Not advice as such. It's just be vigilant in terms of whose advice you listen to and whose you choose not to. As you said, these people are quite easy to spot for the reasons you've listed already, and maybe do a bit more digging to see what conflicts of interest might there be. Because if you look back at, you know, any big situations back through history, Big Pharma is a classic example. There's conflicts of interest everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, we won't get too deep into Big Pharma, but it's a classic example whereby there's contradictions there everywhere, and there's just conflicts of interest left, right, and center. And the sad thing is, these guys don't even try to hide it. They're hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's like when you suddenly see these things are not even hidden. You know, you have to just think, okay, I think it is, but it is our duty to be vigilant and to do our due diligence in terms of what advice we follow, and to make sure that it is in our best interest, in our family's best interest, and in the country's best interest. You know, and not for their best interest.
Yeah. So basically, you use that is what I would say.
Definitely. I don't think they're watching this, but you never know. And then this is a quite a scary one. You know, it's the vulture. And again, I'm not sure that any vultures will be watching this video, but it's about, you know, when we're on the receiving end of this, is really to notice what's going on, because it can happen. You know, there's all this distraction, there's all this stuff going on, there's all this arguing happening about, you know, this measure and that measure and everything else, and then a new law comes out, and it's all, and it's, to me, it's smoke and mirrors, and it's sleight of hand. It's like, if we just distract everybody with this crazy stuff over here that really doesn't make any sense, it's because we can get on with this other stuff. And I know in Ireland, an awful lot of laws and regulations have been passed without our knowledge. And what it's doing is actually really opening up a lot of sectors, businesses, you know, property market, etc., for these vulture funds. I mean, they're called vulture funds for a reason. It's because they can swoop in and they can literally just take advantage of the devastation that is raging across the world from an economic and a social, you know, point of view. And to me, it's that if we can see that happening, and we're aware of that happening, we can then, what can we do? It's like, well, what can we do? It's these big organizations, I don't have any control. Well, it's to support the local businesses that actually these people are trying to take over at a very, very cheap rate, or to completely decimate. And if we can support our local businesses, and you know, maybe at a national level as well, maybe we can stop this from happening, so that we can keep small and medium businesses running, because in Ireland, they provide 1 million jobs, you know, and we want to keep that going. That's, you know, I'm a small business myself, and you know, it's so important that people have that opportunity. It's not all about big companies, and to be able to work for yourself and run your own business. So to me, whenever I hear of something, you know, I post it just to make people aware. And I would appreciate if other people could do that as well, just so that we know. People can just be aware that it's happening, because it tends to happen again. All this distraction, all of this arguing, you know, the dividing everybody, pitting people against each other. And every time a new thing comes out that's quite insane, and my question is, what's going on behind the scenes? What are they hiding? What's happening that is being slipped underneath the radar? You know, that's not going to be good for us, you know, when this is all over and the dust settles, because it will eventually. You know, everything passes, nothing goes on forever. You know, but what we're going to be left with when the dust settles, you know, I think that's up to us what we do now. So would you have anything to add there to the vulture?
So reiterating some of the stuff you were saying, share information with people when you hear about it, and not necessarily just automatically forwarding it, because some of the information, although it appears great and it might be supportive of your beliefs, it's not always true. I've found out, you know, so do a little bit of, I think the phrase is, due diligence on it before mindlessly forwarding it, which I've been guilty of myself on occasion. But
and then someone's caught me, and I have people who keep me honest, and I have to give a shout out to those people and say thank you for keeping me honest. And it's embarrassing, and you don't want to be wrong, but I'm always willing to, if it's done in a respectful manner, I'm always happy to listen. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Don't just forward stuff willy-nilly because you think, yeah, this is true.
Exactly. Just because it's supportive of your beliefs, and it's easily done. It's like, oh yeah, that backs up what I'm thinking. So I'll forward.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. And it's being right, isn't it? It's like, look, I'm right, and it gives us that dopamine hit, and it makes us feel good, and we can't feel righteous and everything else. But yeah, we do have to be very, very mindful and very careful that we're not spreading anything that isn't true, because that's not going to help anybody.
No, exactly. And also the other point you made about supporting local businesses, that is so important. small businesses have always been the backbone of any economy. So right now they need more support than ever before, in my opinion. And
yeah, I totally agree. And I live in a small town, and you know, I'd love to be able to support, you know, all the local businesses as much as I can, and would encourage people, you know, to do the same. So without their customers, they don't have a business.
exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
really. Yeah, I think it is important, and it's important for those small businesses to also feel that they can draw upon the support of the local community too. I do feel that's really, really important. So the last one is really, it is not easy to do. It's not easy, but I think it is the only way really to get through this, staying intact, keeping our sanity, keeping our society, you know, from stopping it from completely disintegrating. And something came to me during this time, which is that if we always go head to head with people and one person wins and one person loses, actually everybody's lost. When you have a win-lose or a lose-win, it's lose-lose. You know, no one really wins in that situation. You might feel like it, but actually it's not true. But if we go heart to heart, if we drop into our heart space, and if we come from a place of compassion and connection as human beings, you know, to really connect with as many people in a non-judgmental, in a totally accepting and loving way, you know, there's nothing that can beat that, really, at the end of the day. And so the Dove is about, you know, seeing the whole world as one. We are one race. We're not different races. We're not different. We're all human beings, and we're all living on this one planet. And it's not easy, because when you're in righteous mode, or you're fearful, or you're angry and everything else, you're really separated from that heart space. And again, the only way to really do that is to come back into yourself and to be grounded. So before I don't think I can really say too much more about that, other than it's just really, really important. And as soon as you drop into that heart space and into that coming from, you know, true compassion and love for our fellow human beings, everything changes straight away. You know, you light up inside yourself, and you become your best version of yourself, I think. And it's the only way, you know, to reach that. So I am going to do a little grounding exercise. It's only going to take about 30 seconds anyway. It's very quick. But before I do that, and I kind of end on that, is there anything you'd like to add to the Dove?
Yeah, I would. You know, it's been said many times before over the years that there's two real emotions when it comes down to it. There's fear and there's love. Let's all choose love, is what I would say. Yeah,
absolutely. And I heard a great explanation of fear and love, which is that fear is like darkness. So you can't measure darkness, actually. What darkness is an absence of light. So fear is not something you can measure. It's an absence of love.
Yeah.
And when the minute you go there, that light comes in, you know, to your body, to your mind, to your soul, to your spirit, and it does shine. And, you know, there will be people who have been really staying within themselves, very grounded, very centered, very much coming from their heart space, you know, through this. And, you know, they've managed to just really look after themselves as well. And as a result, you know, again, it's that ripple effect, you know, coming from them. So I'll take you through the grounding process, if that's okay.
So yeah.
It's very easy. Nothing, it couldn't be any simpler than this. And we just start off with what's called a balanced breath. So you're going to breathe in through your nose, big breath in and out through your mouth. And you're going to do this. So there's the big breath in. The minute you get to the top of it, you're not going to hold your breath. You're just going to breathe out. And then when you get to the bottom of it, you're going to breathe in. So it's not going to be any holding. It's not like a box breath where you hold your breath. This is just a circular breathing. So again, in and out. So you're going to keep doing that. I can't talk and breathe at the same time. So as you continue to do your balanced breath in and out, you're actually going to bring your focus and attention to your feet. And you're going to imagine that from the soles of your feet, you've got roots like a tree. So you're just going to imagine that these roots are going to descend all the way into the earth. And you imagine those roots going deeper and deeper through the floor, through the soft earth, right the way to the heart of the earth. And we come from the earth and we go back to the earth. So we are inextricably linked to this planet. We don't exist on top of it as just a separate being. We're completely and utterly connected energetically and in every way to the earth. So as you continue to do your balanced breathing, on your next out breath, you're just going to release any stress and tension in your body. You're just going to let it go with the out breath. Imagine it just disappearing down through your body, through your feet, into the ground. So on every out breath, you're just becoming more relaxed, more balanced, more centered, more grounded. The earth can take this. It's just going to take it and just transform it into neutral energy. And then on your next in-breath, you're going to imagine that you're going to breathe in the energy of the earth. That lovely, unconditional, loving, supportive energy, where we come from, where we go back to. And we're going to breathe that in up through the roots, right up to the top of your head and your fingertips, filling your entire body. You can give it a color or a particular name. And breathe out. You keep releasing any stress on the out breath. And after just 2 or 3 cycles of breathing in the earth energy and breathing out stress, we actually can control our autonomic nervous system. We're no longer in sympathetic flight system. We're no longer in parasympathetic withdrawn system. We actually come into the middle and feel completely balanced and present. And if we just do that every now and again throughout the day, just even for 1 minute, we can just reset our bodies. We can just reset that stress level. We don't have to keep carrying it until it builds and builds and builds. We can just let it go. Just bring ourselves back to the present moment, back into the room, back into your present life, and then just look around. Danny, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to chat to you and to share some ideas. Thank you for joining me and being my sounding board, and to add in your immense wisdom as well on this. Really, really appreciate it. And I think we'll sign off here. So thanks, Emil, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you for inviting me on to your COVID animals idea. Great idea.
Well, I hope it helps. I hope it helps some people to just take a little step back and just think, actually, how can I be better? How can I do better? How can I feel better? And that can only have a positive impact, hopefully, on people's lives.
Absolutely, for sure.
Oh. Okay, so thanks a lot, and we will connect again and we will chat soon.
Nice one. Have a good one. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.